Hello and welcome to this edition of Good News. We're looking at the Good Newspaper, trying to find some good news in a world that's so full of trouble, isn't it? So many worries and concerns out there. Particularly good edition this month. We're looking at things like food banks and the world's largest humanitarian airline, both run by Christians. So we're going to look at that to find some hope in this troubled world of ours. So, Andy, over to you. What have you found in the paper?
Hi, Colin. Yeah, we've got the September edition of the Good News newspaper. And the main story is, as you say, about food banks. Obviously, the news is being dominated at the moment by the cost of living crisis. And more people are having to turn to food banks. Many of the food banks in our country are run by churches. And we've got some stories of charities and churches run by dedicated, committed Christians that are manning these food banks, that are providing for their local communities. Some really heart-rending stories of people who are even having to turn off their fridges overnight because they can't afford their electricity bills, and Christians are stepping in and trying to help them. The interesting thing is, of course, that when we look in the Bible, Jesus Christ once described himself as the bread of life. What does that mean? Well, the article explains what he meant when he said that. And it talks about the fact that when we put our faith and trust in Jesus, we find sustenance, we find strength to get us through life. Jesus provides us spiritually with what bread provides us physically. And so we need to put our faith and trust in him. And perhaps this is a message to people today who are really struggling with life. There is hope, there is an answer, and it's to be found in Jesus. So this is the front page of the paper this month. Really good article, challenging article, and an article that links us back to Jesus, who said, "I am the bread of life." Colin.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a misunderstanding out in the world, really, about Christianity. It's a form of escapism. It's the very opposite, actually. It's a way of showing compassion and generosity and being a good neighbour. That's what Jesus tells us to do. It's actually engaging with the world and having hope for the next world as well. So, talking about engagement, the story that in the middle pages here is about an RAF pilot, a mission founder. This guy set up this largest humanitarian airline that I spoke about, who does lots of trips, taking medical supplies and food into remote areas of the world. And it was set up back in the 1940s. And this man is 101 now. Could you believe that? And he only stopped flying when he was 100. It's a remarkable story here. And he talks about how when they first started this organisation called MAF, and they were on their first flight, and they had an accident. Basically, there was a strong headwind as they're taking off, and they crashed into a banana tree. Would you believe it, on the descent? And the plane was destroyed. They couldn't fly it, and they were miles and miles from anywhere. It'd be 3 days walk from the nearest place. And strangely enough, and coincidences happen in the Christian world. You'll hear a lot about those if you do investigate Christianity. A God incident happens, and a Catholic priest on his motorbike suddenly drove around the corner and helped them to find their way back. It's incredible. But there's some great stories here. Have you got anything else there, Andy, you can talk about?
Yeah, just on the back page, I was really impressed with the main story on the sports page, which is the story of the reigning Olympic champion in the 400 metres hurdles. Her name is Sydney McLaughlin, and she talks about how she's been able to handle fame. And she was worried that fame might go to her head, but she talks about her faith in God has kept her humble, and she talks again about the fact that, a bit like the first story, faith in God has given her strength to endure and to run. I was reminded of Eric Liddell, who said, "When I run, I feel God's pleasure." And people will know that quote from Chariots of Fire. Same thing happening today. Another athlete putting her faith and trust in God. Another athlete, world champion, finding that God is all that she needs.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. And how can we get hold of the paper? What can we do?
Yeah, well, we're going to put a link on at the end of the video. If you're a Christian, get hold of a copy of the Good News newspaper, give it out in your neighbourhood, give it to friends, family, colleagues. If you're someone who's not sure about your faith, if you're someone who's questioning, do I have a relationship with God or not, get hold of the paper, find out through reading the stories of people who do have a relationship with God, what God can do for you and how Jesus can be real in your life. Follow the link at the end of the video. We'll send you a free copy. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.